Now that was the circumstances in the 60s. Now we had in 1967 a very fierce riots in Hong Kong with the communists. A lot of people killed as a result of bombs, and the police at the time, of course, took the best fight, and they worked very hard. After a year, they managed to suppress the uprising. But since then, the police were in full power of nearly everything. And since then, drugs, dangerous drugs, illegal gambling, sex dens, all flourish in Hong Kong. You find them everywhere. They're all protected by the police, and little was done about it. What about the people? The people consider, as a matter of customs, as a matter of culture, that paying government services for expected deliveries was at the time normal. If you didn't pay, you're not going to get things done. You apply for a license, you apply for anything, even if there's a fire next door. The fireman came, and if you didn't pay them, they let the fire go. It's that bad. We call it, if you got water, there is water. The first water is money, means money. The second, cash. The second water is water to put out the fire. So that's the situation. Okay.
للتلخيص، سيد دانييل من هونغ كونغ، وهي بس من 20 سنة صارت جزء من الصين. قبل ذلك كانت لمدة قرن من الزمان مستعمرة بريطانية. حكى لنا قصة وقت ما كان بالمدرسة الثانوية، وكان طالع بتمشى مع أصحابه بعد المدرسة، وكانوا بيقطعوا بشارع مزدحم جنب المدرسة، وإجا ضابط شرطة مسكهم إنهم عم بيمشوا بطريقة مش ملائمة. وواحد من أصحابه قال لضابط الشرطة بس أنا ساكن بمساكن الشرطة لأنه أبوي ضابط شرطة، وبالتالي ما صاروا شيء، أما هم فصار عندهم مشاكل. كمان ب 1967 كان في شغب أعمال شغب كثيرة من الحزب الشيوعي في هونغ كونغ، وأدت هاي الأعمال لمقتل أعداد كبيرة من الناس، لأن الشرطة كانت تضرب بحزم وبشدة حتى قمعوا هاي الانتفاضة، وصارت الشرطة تتحكم بكل شيء منذ ذلك الحين. وهذا أدى لانتشار المخدرات، القمار غير الشرعي، تجارة الجنس، كلها بحماية الشرطة. وكانت الناس بهذيك الفترة تعتبر إنه من الأعراف المحلية إنك تعطي إكرامية لموظف الحكومة عشان يمشي لك أمورك. حتى رجل الإطفائية بتبلغ عن حريق بيجي بيقول لك تعطينا ميتنا بنعطيك ميتك، يعني أنت بتدفع عشان تاخذ خدمة الإطفائية.
Now the people at the time virtually accepted corruption was a way of life, and they are obliged to pay for any services. The young generation, especially the students, they didn't think so. There were some noises coming from them, but not much. Now what triggered off a big turn, was that the media one day reported that a senior police officer, a chief superintendent of police, a British respected officer, who was under investigation by their own police anti-corruption office. Now, he was under investigation for having too much money. Now, at that time, I think he's got about something equivalent to $1 million US, while his accumulated income was only about over the years 400,000. So you can make a comparison how much he's acquired through corruption while he's in office. Now he was under investigation But then he managed to leave Hong Kong via the airport, using his police warrant card. Now, the day he left, he went straight to Singapore, where his wife and children were waiting for him. Now, the wife and children left a day before that. So everything was planned. And eventually, the whole family returned to UK. That was reported by the media. And the people actually was alarmed of this. Now that started street protests, students uprising, strikes to an extent. The situation was chaotic. Now, one side story, but it's very sarcastic. Youngsters, students were protesting in a park, in a whole group, over 1,000. The police was called in to disperse the crowd. The police was headed by a police officer who is the commander of that region. He ordered the police officers to strike on the students, to arrest them by force and remove them to custodial standards. Now, you would have thought, if you were a police officer and you're trying to disperse a crowd protesting against corruption, you would be more than happy to do it. But in the circumstances, none of the police officers, from rank and file to inspectors, none of them responded to that order from that commander. You would be wondering why. In fact, the commander himself only using his police baton attacked the students. We didn't know what happened. That was a very odd situation. A year later, that commander became our deputy director in the ICAC. You know why? And he told us a story. He said the whole police station was on the take from criminals, from rice operators. The commander was the only police officer who was clean and refused to take any bribes. He was also from the UK, a British officer. And that's why eventually, when ICAC was set up, he was asked to join us. Now, this commander, you ask why he wasn't on the take. That was very strange. But that's his character. Indeed, when he joined us, he told us that actually the whole police station under his command was receiving bribes on a weekly basis. Now, you don't need to go out as a police officer to solicit a bribe. You simply go back to the office, you draw your drawer from the desk, and every Monday morning, the money will be there. So that was the situation. Now, apart from the police, apart from law enforcement, other government departments were corrupt as well. In particular, and I considered it the worst case scenario for corruption, is those on public works. Those responsible for building, for development, everything. I think if you compare corruption in terms of money, I think those responsible for public works would be most corrupt, although the police is equally corrupt. But in terms of money, the comparison is no big deal, because in the 60s, 70s, Hong Kong was fast developing. There were lots of construction projects.
انه قبل التغيرات اللي صارت كانوا الناس بيجدوا الفساد اسلوب حياتهم وانهم لازم يدفعوا مقابل كل الخدمات اللي لازم ياخذوها. الوحيدين اللي تحدثوا بمناهضة هذا الفساد كانوا الشباب وبشكل خاص الطلبة. والحدث الأكبر كان إنه كان في تغطية إعلامية عن ضابط شرطة بريطاني كبير كان يخضع للتحقيق من مكتب مكافحة الفساد في هذيك الفترة بسبب تكوينه ثروات كبيرة بلغت أكثر من $1,000,000، بينما دخله التراكمي في خلال الفترة اللي عمل فيها كان لا يتجاوز 400,000، وكان مخضع للتحقيق ولكنه تمكن من مغادرة هونج كونج من المطار باستخدام أوراقه الشرطية وتوجه إلى سنغافورة حيث كانت تنتظره زوجته وأولاده، وعاد إلى بريطانيا. غطى الإعلام هذا الخبر وسبب ذعرا للناس، واندلعت احتجاجات في الشوارع وانتفاضة طلابية وإضرابات وفوضى عارمة. كان الشباب والطلبة يحتاجون في حدائق عامة، واستدعت الشرطة لتفريق الجموع بإمرة القائد العام لهذه المنطقة من قائد الشرطة، وكان الأمر بأن على رجال الشرطة تفريق الجموع وضربهم واعتقالهم بالقوة، ولكن لم يتحرك أحد من رجال الشرطة، وكان هذا أمرا غريبا. ولماذا؟ لأنه كانت في الواقع كل الشرطة مرشية من كل المجرمين في المنطقة إلى آخره، لكن هذا القائد الوحيد اللي كان نظيف وكان يرفض الرشوة، وبالتالي بعد فترة هذا القائد أصبح نائب المفوض للمفوضية المستقلة لمكافحة الفساد اللي أنشئت لاحقا. بالإضافة للشرطة اللي كانت فاسدة وتتلقى رشاوى بشكل منتظم، كانت كمان الهيئات المسؤولة عن الأشغال العامة مرتشية بشكل خاص. طبعا كمية الأموال اللي كانت تيجي بفترة الستينات والسبعينات بالتطور العمراني الهائل اللي صار بهونغ كونغ كانت كميات كتير كبيرة.
Right. Now, I mentioned about the protests. In fact, it got worse and worse within a few days. And actually, the whole of Hong Kong was on fire, basically. Now, the government was then headed by Sir Murray McLehose from UK. He was new to Hong Kong as a governor. He didn't quite like the situation, and he thought, well, something needed to be done. So he immediately appointed a senior judge to look into the problem of corruption in Hong Kong. Within 3 months, the judge turned out 2 reports. The first report is on the situation of corruption in Hong Kong, how bad it was, and it described various incidents. The second report, he made observations and indirectly some recommendations for the government. In a nutshell, he's saying that the fight against corruption will not be successful if it continues to be handled by the police, because the police was not trusted by the people at the time. The governor actually accepted the recommendations and considered it time for a change. So he immediately set up the ICAC, the Independent Commission Against Corruption, an agency that was never ever heard of in Hong Kong. Now, if you ask me how come the government decided to take action against corruption, I would say purely the people's power. The government was actually under severe pressure from the people. Now, if you want to harass the situation, you don't want protests, you don't want fightings, you don't want police arrest, you don't want anything on street, the only way is to do something about it. Now, the governor has taken the right direction on this occasion, but how did the people feel? The people didn't quite trust the colonial government. They were waiting to see what happened. Now, the governor actually appointed a very senior administrative officer to take charge and be the commissioner, first commissioner. Now, the first problem for the commissioner was to where to find the people to do the job. because the entire government was corrupt. You cannot take any person from the government to take charge of anti-corruption. In particular, in relation to law enforcement. Okay, so the idea was then to recruit experienced investigators, detectives. Where from? From common law jurisdictions, but not in Hong Kong. So United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia were the targets for recruitment of experienced officer. Now, experienced officer itself, would that be sufficient? I mean, you put experienced people into a totally different jurisdiction and then start doing things? What do you need? You need local knowledge. So where do you get the local knowledge from? Again, from government servants? The answer was no. The answer was, okay, we get fresh graduates from the universities. These young people were not tainted.
Still clean.
That's right. And they were able to, make up the lack of local knowledge for the expatriate officers. Now, so when we first started, you got experienced police officers. Some of them actually just retired. So it's plenty of the, investigative experience. Plus locals, graduates, fresh graduates. Now, I was one of them. I didn't study anything relating to law or whatever. I study architecture. But I found that idea at that time very, very interesting and very inviting. And of course, there is a commitment, there is a mandate for Hong Kong people. So I joined it. Actually, our role in the first few years was simply assisting. We were trained as investigators, but we didn't have the experience. The expatriate officers actually took the lead. The idea to fight corruption was, okay, we took over from the anti-corruption office with the police. Now, that was the law enforcement part of it. You arrest those who are corrupt, you prosecute them, and you send them to prison if convicted. But the idea at the time was that, well, you don't just use a stick. You need carrots. And from the carrot side, it would be education as well as prevention. So when the ICC was first set up, there were 3 departments. One is the operations department, which I've just described, with all the experts and locals. We have the community relations department responsible for education, for telling the people the evils of corruption, for getting their support on reporting corruption, as well as keeping the community alert of the need to report corruption and to fight corruption. Now, that's the mandate of the community relations. And corruption prevention is also a major arm to curb or prevent future happenings of corrupt activities. Now, usually when we complete an investigation, now whether or not there is a resultant prosecution, the investigation might reveal some loopholes within the system of a particular government department. Now, if that is identified, or if the system or the procedures or even the mechanism was not good enough to prevent corruption, our corruption prevention department will make the recommendations for changes. Now, that is not simply something that the corruption prevention department wants. The message will go straight up to the governor. And from the governor, it goes straight down to the relevant departments. So afterwards, the corruption prevention department will liaise directly with the government departments to supervise, to ensure changes. If they refuse to change, fine. They have to give a very valid reasons for that. Yeah. If not, the governor will intervene. That's the system.
I have to.
Okay.
الوضع ساء كتير بوجود الاحتجاجات، وبوقت قصير عمت الاحتجاجات كل هونغ كونغ، حتى أتى لرئاسة الحكومة سير ميرلي وهو حاكم بريطاني ولم يعجبه الوضع، وقرر أن يفعل شيء تجاه هذا الفساد. فعين قاضي كبير لدراسة وضع الفساد في هونغ كونغ، وأصدر القاضي تقريرين. الواحد أشار إلى وضع الفساد المستفحل في البلاد، والثاني وضع ملاحظات وتوصيات للحكومة لمكافحة الفساد، وكان مفادها أن مكافحة الفساد لن تنجح إذا واصلت الشرطة هذه العملية لعدم ثقة الناس بالشرطة ولوضع الفساد داخل الشرطة نفسها. قبل الحاكم الجديد بهذه التوصيات، وعليه أعلن عن إنشاء المفوضية المستقلة لمكافحة الفساد، والتي لم يكن أحد قد سمع بشيء مثلها في هونغ كونغ من قبل. فلماذا قررت الحكومة ذلك؟ لأن قوة الشعب تحكمت، وكان هناك ضغط قوي من الشعب وبسبب الأحداث التي كانت في الشوارع والاحتجاجات، وكان هذا توجه سليم، ولكن الشعب لم يكن يثق بالحكومة، ولهذا عين الحاكم مدير إداري، وكان هو أول مفوض للمفوضية المستقلة. المشكلة أنه أين يمكن أن نجد أشخاصا لأداء العمل الخاص بمكافحة الفساد في ظل الوضع القائم في هونغ كونغ؟ ما في حدا بيعرف. وعليه كان ينبغي استجلاب أو استخدام محققين من الخارج، خبراء في هذا النظام من نظام القانون العرفي، فكانت الدول المرشحة بريطانيا، كندا وأستراليا. ولكن هل يكفي؟ هل يعملون في نظام هم يأتون من نظام قضائي وقانوني مختلف ويعملون في هونغ كونغ، وبالتالي كان يجب تطوير المعرفة المحلية. لم يكن بالإمكان الاعتماد على موظفي الحكومة الحاليين بسبب وضع الفساد، وبالتالي تم الاعتماد على خريجي الجامعات الجدد لأنهم لم يكونوا بعد ملوثين، ولكن ينقصهم الخبرة، وكانوا بالتالي يتم تدريبهم. كان دانييل أحدهم، وعندما بدأوا كان أيضا هناك بعض الضباط الشرطة المتقاعدين، ودانييل شخصيا درس زراعة، لم يكن قد درس أي شيء له علاقة بالقانون. architecture، سوري أنا سمعت غلط.
المهم مش أنتي كوربشن،
المهم مش شيء له علاقة بالفساد، سوري
ولا في اللو ولا في القانون
ولا أي شيء. وكان في التزام، وبالتالي كان دورهم المساعدة، كان في تدريب على التحقيق. الخبراء الأجانب في البداية قادوا العملية، وكان كمان إنه فكرة مكافحة الفساد، كان في وحدة لمكافحة الفساد في الشرطة أخذوا دورها، والفكرة كانت إنه مش بس بدك تعاقب، بدك تعطي حوافز مثل العصا والجزرة مثل ما بيحكوا. فالحوافز كانت في التعليم، في الوقاية من الفساد، وبالتالي أصبح تكوين المفوضية دائرة العمليات التي تقوم بالتحقيق، دائرة العلاقات المجتمعية التي تقوم بالتثقيف ودعم المجتمع وحماية المبلغين والتشديد على ضرورة التبليغ عن الفساد، ودائرة الوقاية من الفساد. وعند الانتهاء من أي تحقيق لا يؤدي بالضرورة إلى ملاحقة قضائية، ولكن يمكن أن يؤدي إلى اكتشاف فجوات قانونية في بعض الدوائر الحكومية وآلياتها وإجراءاتها، وبالتالي يتم تقديم التوصيات بما يكفل تحسين الوضع لمكافحة الفساد، وتنتقل هذه الرسالة لحاكم البلاد مباشرة ثم للدائرة المعنية، لأنه كان في بعض المقاومة في بعض الدوائر، وإذا كانت بعض الدوائر ترفض التغيير كان يجب أن تعطي سبب واضح وصريح لهذا الأمر.
Okay. Now you may be wondering why me, having been trained as an architect, joined the commission. In fact, the recruitment policy of the commission at the time is to have diversified background training of our local officers so that they can provide their knowledge on different sectors: engineering, construction, legal, accountancy. So if you look at the local officers, we've got people from different professions and different backgrounds. So that helps a lot because corruption exists in each and every sector. So that's why you need people with that particular knowledge of the sector. Particularly nowadays, because the financial market in Hong Kong was so advanced. You got numerous products coming out, numerous systems, the stock exchange, the banking system, everything. You need people of that kind of knowledge. If not, we'll have to provide workshop training for that. Now that was the time, the three-pronged strategy, operations, prevention, and education. We worked very well. People responded very positively, and they supported us. As you said, even the film industry, they made a lot of movies out of that, based on actually true stories. Although some of them were with a bit of exaggeration, but most of them are based on stories. Now, the people were clapping their hands. The law enforcement, particularly the police and other government departments, were looked at or viewed by the ordinary citizens as the corrupt generation. Now, if you were one of them, how would you feel? I mean, if you walk out to the street and said, well, people know that you're from a particular government department, and just people around you would smile and said, these people will be corrupt and would be arrested one day. How would you feel if you are one of those government servants or police officer? You feel very bad. You feel very bad. You lose your, basically you lose your status, you lose your esteem as a government servant, and wherever you go, you feel like you're being looked upon as something different. Yes. So the sentiment within the government department was going down. The morale was going down, in particular with the police. There was a saying that it's just, I'm surviving today. It's just a time when I'll get Nick arrested and go to prison. Yes. It's a matter of time. So they hit back. The government servants hit back, in particular the law enforcement part of it. 3 years after, I can tell you, during the 3 years, we were making arrests at least 4 times in a week. And I mean early morning raid on government departments, government servants' home, searching, arresting. Almost happened every day. And news was on the newspaper, on TV, nearly every day. So it's a swapping sort of actions against corruption. Ordinary people simply clapped their hands. They were very happy. They appreciated the government's efforts. They appreciated the agency's work. But then the entire civil service was sort of uprising. In November 1977, that was a day when the university was having a congregation in the City Hall in Central District. And the police headquarters was about 1 kilometer down the road. Police officers were there mobbing, gathering, accusing the government of putting them in trouble, accusing the commissioner of police of not protecting them, accusing the ICC of overpowering them. They marched to the City Hall waiting for the governor to finish the congregation ceremony, and they tried to do something about it. That was threatening, actually. Of course, the governor was protected and escorted away. So, without going anywhere else, they marched onto the ICC premises, 0.5 kilometer down the road. And they stormed our offices. They wanted to break in. Of course, our officers resisted. But in a situation like this, if you were the head of the operations department, how would you respond to such a situation? Your office is under attack. Some of the police officers were armed. Anyone?
You lock the door.
Sorry?
Lock the door. Yeah.
Lock the door. We did lock the door. We put all the cabinets from behind the door. But the proper way to do it was to call the police. In fact, our director at the time called the police. Now, they didn't come after 3 hours. And they came with the Blueberry squad. They walked around the office. Of course, 3 hours afterwards, all those problematic police officers mopping outside our offices were gone. Okay, of course, our technical people took pictures, everything. Now, that alarmed the governor because it's a police mutiny. Okay. That alarmed the British government as well. Now, we were trying to figure out what happened. Our commissioner, the very next day, came to us and said, we will continue our mandate. We are not scared by this attack. That's what the commissioner said to us. But of course, much higher in the government were having, urgent meetings. A few days later, then came the announcement of a partial amnesty. The amnesty was to pardon all those who might have been corrupt before the 1st of January the same year. Now, there wasn't any pre-warning of such, but it came all of a sudden, direct from the British government, direct from the governor. We were very shocked at the time. The whole of Hong Kong was shocked. Indeed, afterwards, we learned that actually the British Army were on alert at the time. And the British government didn't want any crisis as a result of that. That would reflect badly on the management. So that came the declaration of the partial amnesty. The most of the Hong Kong people were upset by this news. The agency, in particular, our people, were very much aggrieved with the decision. But what could you do? Now, the government has since came out to pledge that we would not tolerate corruption, despite the announcement of the partial amnesty. The agency will continue to do their job. But then, the good thing is the civil servants, all the government servants, had an opportunity to turn a new leaf.
هلا طبعا راح تسألوا كيف مهندس معماري صار جزء من هاي الهيئة كانت سياستها أن تعين ناس من تخصصات مختلفة حتى يتمكنوا من التحقيق في كل القضايا. وأعطى مثل عن السوق المالي في هونغ كونغ، وهو سوق مالي متقدم جدا يقدم الكثير من المنتجات والأنظمة والبورصة وخدمات البنوك وغيرها. وبالتالي أي أحد يقوم بالتحقيق في هذا السوق يجب أن يكون مطلعا على عملياته. وظلت استراتيجية المفوضية على مستوى العمليات والوقاية والتثقيف العام، واستجاب الناس لعمل المفوضية ودعموها حتى أنه تم صنع أفلام عن قصص حقيقية مع بعض المبالغة حول نجاحات المفوضية. ولكن بالطبع بعد 3 سنوات من العمل والقبض على الكثير من الفاسدين ثارت ثائرة الهيئات الحكومية التي كانت توصم بالفساد وخاصة الشرطة. واعتبروا كان يعني كيف ممكن تحس انت لو كنت في واحد من هاي المؤسسات تفقد وضعك، تفقد احترام الناس لإلك، تفقد خوفهم منك. وبالتالي صار في نوع من الشغب الشرطي او العصيان الشرطي، لانه معنوياتهم كانت في الحضيض في هاي المؤسسات. حتى اجى يوم يعني بعد ما صار في عمليات اعتقال توصل ل4 اعتقالات في الاسبوع، تفتيش واعتقال لكل الفاسدين مع تغطية اعلامية كبيرة وعمليات كاملة. فصار في نوع من الانتفاضة الشرطية. في نوفمبر 1977 كان في اجتماع في البلدية، وكان الحاكم جاي على هذا الاجتماع، وقررت الشرطة تتدخل. طبعا الحاكم كان مأمن مشروع، لكن الشرطة قامت وهجمت على مقر المفوضية العامة وصاروا يضربوا المقر. وبالتالي كان التفكير لو أنت مدير العمليات في المفوضية كيف تتصرف تجاه شغب الشرطة قدامك.
حاولوا يسكروا الابواب الى اخره، لكن بالنهايه اتصلوا بالشرطه، واجهوا الشرطه بالشرطه. طبعا الشرطه اللي اتصلوا فيها لتحميهم من الشغب اجت بعد 3 ساعات، بعد ما كان الوضع صار مستفحل وكل المشكلجيه من الشرطه كانوا فلوا، لكن كان في تصوير لكل الاحداث اللي صارت. بس هذا اعطى مؤشر انذار للحكومه انه الشرطه غير راضيه. لكن المفوض الخاص بالفساد قال يجب ان نواصل عملنا ولن نخاف. لكن الحكومة مع الحكومة البريطانية، لأنه نص البلد مستعمرة، أصدرت عفو جزئي لأنه ما كان بدهم مشاكل. العفو الجزئي شمل الناس اللي كان مشكوك بارتكابهم لجرائم فساد قبل 1 يناير من نفس السنة اللي هي 1977، لأنه هذا شكل صدمة للجميع. لكن عرفوا فيما بعد أنه حتى الجيش البريطاني كان موضوع في قيد التحفظ، بس ما كان بدهم مشاكل. معظم أهالي هونج كونج أزعجهم هذا القانون والقرار اللي صدر عفوا، لكن الحكومة أعلنت بعد ذلك إنها لن تتسامح أبدا مع الفساد، وكانت هاي فرصة لبعض المؤسسات المدنية اللي بتقدم خدمة عامة إنها تفتح صفحة جديدة هي وموظفينها.
Now you may be wondering what happened to that attack, the storm on the ICC offices. Eventually only one retired detective officer was prosecuted. The rest sort of pardoned, I would say. It's a political decision not to further aggravate the situation between the police and the ICAC. Now the challenge in the light of the partial amnesty was how to sustain the impact, the momentum on the fight against corruption. That was a really difficult job after the announcement of the amnesty. We actually mapped out completely different strategies, and we, apart from investigation, we placed more emphasis on prevention and education. Okay, and of course, with the announcement of the amnesty, there were few cases for investigation. But then that's a good chance for the commission to, rebuild itself. Now, prior to the police mutiny, 80% of our cases were targeted against government servants. The remaining 20%, 10% would go to public servants, those public bodies, and only 10% concerned the business sector. So there was quite an imbalanced enforcement at the time. So after the partial amnesty, we shifted our focus to corruption in the private sector, in the business sector. So you could see that the next 10 years, there were few cases prosecuted against government servants, but more cases against the business sector, in particular the banking industries. Now, why was that? Because in mid-80s, there was an announcement by Beijing and the British government that Hong Kong would be returned to China in 1997. That triggered off quite a mass exodus of Hong Kong people to overseas. A lot of them were seeking to emigrate to other countries. Now, if you're trying to emigrate, what would you think as an ordinary people? I'll get more money before I emigrate. Now, those in the private sector were keen to make more money. We called it the quick buck syndrome at the time, and they got a lot of money. A lot of that money were actually, selling their duties, particularly those in the banks. They granted a lot of banking facilities to enterprises, big and medium size, and in return, they got a percentage, usually 5%. Now, if you talk about $100 million loan for an enterprise, you're talking about 5 million. That's a lot of money.
Yes.
It's good enough for a family to emigrate and live happily.
To have a new life in the UK or America.
America or Canada, yeah. So we had a lot of cases like that. And in fact, at one time we were investigating no less than 30 banks. Now, not just local banks, but international banks.
Ones.
Well, we had the Barclays, we had the most famous is the BCCI. I mean, and lots of cases. All those credit officers were our targets. Okay. Plus, in the late 80s, we had cases against the stock exchange. Against when you got listed, you have to pay the lot. All this actually came as a sort of total revamp for the financial sector, and we worked pretty hard on that. Just to ensure that there is still a level playing field for business people in Hong Kong. Now that's the operational strategy in the 80s. Into the 90s, when 1997 was about to come, we suddenly considered that, well, can we sustain with the momentum? Looking back for the last 10 years, there wasn't much actions against the government servants. Was the government clean, or was were the government departments operating positively? We were not sure, because our focus was on the private sector. So all of a sudden we considered, well, we need to have a balanced approach, despite what happened 10 years ago with the partial amnesty. So the balance is we'll look into both sectors, see what actually happens before 1997 comes. So we suddenly identified problems with small syndicated corruption within the government. Now, after not sort of touching them for so many years, corruption syndicate in the old days was common, but after the partial amnesty, everything was neutralized. But seems by early 90s, there were signs of them, resurrecting, coming back. So we again rearranged our deployment. We took quite quick actions to ensure that Hong Kong was properly managed in terms of anti-corruption before we returned to China, because the international community actually looked at Hong Kong at the time, considering that one day when Hong Kong returned to China, the corruption situation would get worse. So we didn't want that to happen. We actually reorganized part of the operations department, making preparations for the change. Now, after 1997, our preparation for the worst scenario didn't come from China. In fact, China was controlling very tightly on anything, and Hong Kong was left basically on its own for at least 10 years. So nothing really changed. But what changed was the international financial turmoil that affected not only Hong Kong but the whole world, in particular the Asian market. That's in the late 90s. We identified lots of problems with the financial sectors, with the listed companies, and we found out that great majorities of the companies were actually manipulating their accounts. Some of them manipulating their accounts for personal gain, some of them manipulating accounts for the purpose of getting listed in the stock market. All very complex matters. But that it was so seriously affecting Hong Kong as a financial center. Now, again, the next 5-6 years we focus on all these problems. and thanks to the preparation for her change before the 1997, and that actually shifted to this direction rather than corruption from across the border from mainland China. Now all that worked well into the millennium. We were busy, but we were productive and we were supported by the people.
هلا قد تتساءلوا ماذا حدث بعد الهجوم على المفوضية. فقط واحد من ضباط الشرطة المتقاعدين خضع للملاحقة القضائية بعد هذا الهجوم، أما الباقين فحصلوا على عفو. وبالتالي كان التحدي أمام المفوضية هو كيفية التعامل مع العفو الجزئي الذي صدر بحق بعض الفاسدين، وكيفية المحافظة على زخم جهودهم في مكافحة الفساد. وطبقوا استراتيجيات مختلفة بالإضافة للتحقيقات التي كانوا يجرونها. قرروا التركيز على التثقيف العام والوقاية من الفساد، وأن تكون هناك فرصة لإعادة بناء المفوضية. قبل عصيان الشرطة كانت 80% من القضايا موجهة ضد موظفين في الحكومة، و10% ضد هيئات شبه حكومية، و10% في قطاع المال والأعمال. بعد العفو الجزئي قررت المفوضية التوجه في تركيزها في مكافحة الفساد على القطاع الخاص، واستمر هذا لسنوات العشر التي لحقت الأحداث السابقة. وكان هناك أقل قضايا تجاه موظفي الحكومة مقارنة بقضايا القطاع الخاص، خاصة البنوك. والسبب في ذلك هو أنه في الثمانينيات أعلنت بريطانيا أنها سوف تعيد هونج كونج إلى الصين، وكان هناك الكثيرين مما يحاولون الهجرة من البلاد، وكانوا يحاولون تكويم أموال أكبر قدر ممكن منها قبل أن يهاجروا. وكان من بين هؤلاء مثلا مسؤولي الإقراض في المصارف الذين كانوا يمنحون تسهيلات مصرفية للشركات لقاء عمولة على هذه التسهيلات. فإذا أخذت شركة قرض ب$100 مليون ممكن يطلع لهم 5 مليون، وبالتالي بيقدروا يستخدموها ليهاجروا. وكانت هناك حالات كثيرة من بنوك محلية ودولية. كان في بنك بيرلي، BCCI كان أكثر مثل، واستهدفوا بالتالي مسؤولي الإقراض والقائمين على هذه الخدمات. في نهاية الثمانينيات كان هناك إدراج لكثير من الشركات على البورصة، وكان كان هذا يضر بالقطاع المالي، لأنهم اكتشفوا أن الكثير من الشركات كانت تتلاعب بحساباتها، إما لتحقيق أرباح أكثر أو لإدراج اسمها على بورصة هونغ كونغ. وكانوا يقتربون من التسعينيات ومن الانتقال إلى الصين. وكان هناك السؤال: لقد ركزنا على قطاع المال والأعمال، ماذا بشأن الحكومة؟ هل حصلنا على حكومة نظيفة؟ عندما أعادوا التحقيق في الحكومة وجدوا أن الحكومة لم تكن نظيفة تماما، وأن بعض بؤر الفساد كانت تعاود الظهور من جديد. وبالتالي قرروا التوجه إلى توازن ما بين التركيز على كلا القطاعين العام والخاص، وخاصة لتحييد العفو الجزئي الذي حدث. وبعد ذلك كانوا أيضا يخشون نظرة المجتمع الدولي لهونغ كونغ التي أصبحت مركز مال مهم جدا، وكانوا يخشون من النظرة بأنها عندما تعود إلى الصين سوف يعود الفساد ليستشري في البلاد بسبب الوضع في الصين. ولكنهم اكتشفوا أن الوضع الأسوأ أو السيناريو الأسوأ لم يكن العودة إلى الصين، بل كان التقلبات المالية والمالية الكبيرة في نهاية التسعينيات. وبالتالي قرروا التركيز على هذه المشاكل حتى يتحضروا قبل 1997 وأن يكونوا قد احتووا الفساد. والآن نصل إلى الألفيات.
طيب شكرا. بس أنا بدي أحكي إنه راح يحاول هلا يختصر السيد لي حوالي 3-4 دقائق ونفتح باب النقاش. بس ترجمين.
So we will sum up in 3-4 minutes and then we will take questions.
Okay, yeah. Now, what I'm going to say is the ICAC is given very strong powers of investigation by law. Indeed, we have some powers that the police, criminal investigation department do not have. Now, how are you going to ensure that such powers are not abused? Now, in our system, there are committees, outside committees, comprising representatives from the society, from various professions, as well as very senior government officials. They form committees to keep watch on our work. One thing I'd like to mention is we can start any investigation on corruption, but we cannot write off a case. without the consent of the overseeing committee, just to ensure impartiality all along. Now, the Hong Kong system has been pretty successful, I must say. The system itself has been copied or followed by a number of jurisdictions, but not all of those jurisdictions are successful after copying the system. Now, the crux of the matter is it's not the system that works, it's the people that make it work. Okay. In fact, I can say that in recent years, with the change of the top echelon of the government, there are changes in not the direction, not the policy, but by the way they handle the problem. Now, that is something that we are concerned with by Hong Kong people, and that is also a concern shared by some jurisdictions overseas. It's easy to copy a system, but it's difficult to put the right man in the right place to do the right job. Now, that's all I want to say, and I welcome any question.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
باختصار المفوضية لديها صلاحيات موسعة بإجراء التحقيقات، وهذا بموجب القانون، وحتى إن صلاحياتها تفوق بعض صلاحيات الشرطة الجنائية المسؤولة عن التحقيقات. ولكن كيف يمكن أن نضمن عدم سوء استخدام هذه الصلاحيات؟ وضعت لجان خارجية من خبراء ومسؤولين وشخصيات عامة لمراقبة عمل المفوضية، وبالتالي يمكن للمفوضية أن تباشر بأي تحقيق، ولكن لا يتم حفظ القضية بدون موافقة هذه اللجان المراقبة. وهكذا نجح نظام هونغ كونغ بشكل كبير، لدرجة أن بعض الأنظمة الأخرى حاولت أن تقلده أو تنسخه، ولكنها لم تحقق نفس القدر من النجاح. فالمهم ليس النظام، المهم من يقوم به. في السنوات الأخيرة مع التغيرات في أعلى سلم الحكومة كانت هناك تغيرات في طريقة التعامل مع مشكلة الفساد، وهذا يقلق سكان هونغ كونغ ويقلق المراقبين لها من الخارج. ولكن نقول دائما المهم ليس النظام، المهم أن يكون الشخص المناسب في المكان المناسب.
شكرا. طيب خلينا نبدأ مع الدكتور نبيل بسيس. تفضل دكتور.
بالإنجليزي عشان أسهل.
أسهل. طب تفضل.
Thank you very much. I have two remarks and three questions. The first remark is the fact that we have whole political systems that sometimes can be corrupted through the influence of interest groups and criminal groups as well. And we have examples, but we don't have to go into that.
Yeah.
And your case probably is not one that where it reached the whole political system, although it permeated the civil service and the police. The other thing I want to say is that this emphasis on experience officers from the UK and other Anglo-Saxons.
Yeah.
One of the most notorious cases we know of is one British police officer.
Yes.
You know it, of course.
Yes.
The one
Yes.
who claims to have invented this detection device.
Yeah.
That caused so much lives here in our
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
When he had the stick and put the chip at the end of it, and he claimed that this can detect explosives.
Yeah.
And they used to use it in hotels all around the Middle East.
Yeah.
It was a big case of fraud. So I don't trust people just because of the way they look. Obviously, they have other qualifications. Now to my questions. How difficult is it to make a tight case? This is question number one. How difficult is it to make a tight case against a person accused of corruption?
How difficult, yeah.
Yeah, is it to make a tight case?
Yeah.
Prosecutable case?
Yeah.
Question number two, how long does it take between start of investigation and conviction in general?
Yeah.
And my third question is, how do you deal with payback? How does it impact the investigation and possible conviction, possible sentence?
Okay. The first question, difficulties, I would say very difficult. Because if you look at the law, not only in Hong Kong but elsewhere, the one who pays a bribe and the one who accepts a bribe are both considered guilty of corruption or bribery. Okay? To prosecute either one side you need the evidence from the other. So when you consider prosecution of bribery case, you need to have either party to be prosecution witness, unless in a corruption and a bribery transaction there is a middleman. But the middleman is equally guilty of the offense. So balancing the need for prosecution, sometimes in the case with briber, the taker, and the middleman, you would use the middleman as the immunity witness, given immunity. Without the middleman, it would be difficult for the prosecution to consider who is going to be the star witness. Now, usually, in a government corruption case, the government servant is the target. But that is still not considered fair, I must say. In most cases, we would prefer, if evidence is available, that the giver of a bribe be dealt with first at court. Hopefully he pleads guilty, and then followed by mitigation, and then he will give evidence against the government servant taking the bribe. Now that's the best case scenario. The difficulties is you may not be that lucky to have the evidence forthcoming, and then you may not be there may not be a prosecution. Now,
can you quantify this?
Quantify?
Yeah.
Now, I would say, now depends on the skill of the investigators. Yeah. Now, if they are able to, we say, getting a cough from the suspects, you get a better chance of prosecution. If there is no admission from anyone, basically, there is no chance of any court proceedings.
5%, 10%?
Now, I would say in the early days, about 20%. Nowadays, I would say 5 to 10%. Now, 5% in terms of criminal prosecutions, another 5% in terms of evidence for disciplinary action. Now, that is the most difficult part. But the easier part to deal with a very corrupt, and I mean very corrupt, government servants who's in possession of disproportionate assets, that's much easier to prove, because you simply prove that he's got more money than he should have, or properties he should have. Then there is a case for prosecution. Now, the negative avertment issue comes into play. We are going to prove he's guilty once he's got the disproportionate asset proven. Okay. Your second question, timing. Now, in the 70s, in the 80s, or even in the 90s, okay, more than 20 years ago, investigating a case normally takes 3 months to a year. Now, 3 months is simple one-off transaction of corrupt payment. Okay. If it is caught red-handed, I mean, you immediately go to court. But for ordinary corruption cases, it will be about 3 months to 6 months. If it involves a complicated accounting procedures for analyzing, like in the case of disproportionate asset, you have to trace all the properties, all the money, all the transactions, it may take a year. Okay. Nowadays, the timing for investigation, apart from ambush situations, I mean a proper investigation into past corrupt activities, that would take at least 6 months. The average is over a year. Because it's more and more difficult to identify the transaction nowadays. People are getting smart. The criminals are much smarter than before. They know how to hide their money. They know how to camouflage the corrupt transactions.
A follow-up question on this. Is there any cooperation between the tax authority and the...
Yes.
Is it allowed in Hong Kong?
Now, that's a very good question, in fact. That was a definite no.
Mr. Dr. Nabil was the Minister of Finance.
I see. That was a
So
definite.
he
Yeah.
No, it was,
Yeah.
that is common.
That was
There
a,
are connection between taxes offices or
that's right. Yeah, there's a tax provision.
Yeah, because there is in certain countries like in Germany,
Yes.
they do not allow this cooperation.
Yeah. We
Other
d-
countries they do.
we didn't allow it until 1996. In fact, I was there. I appeared before the Bills Committee, arguing that the ICAC should have access to tax records for the purpose of investigation. After much convincing, the legislators agreed to grant the ICAC only, not the police, the power to access tax records. Now, that actually helped a lot in difficult cases. Because in the old days, the secrecy of that provision actually helped a lot of criminals to get away from prosecutions. Because the tax department, the Inland Revenue Department, would not relieve any information, although there is a clear indication of criminal activities. Now, back to your question, second question. Yes, nowadays, now, in terms of government cases, corruption cases, 1.5 years, I think, is the average. But for private sector cases, in particular cases involving corruption in banks, in financial institutions, in stock exchange, now that might take years. Years. Now, I can tell you why. Now, as Deputy Commissioner, I had the authority to I have the authority to sign actually authorizations to check bank accounts. Okay. On top of them, I have the authority to issue what we call the general bank circulars to all financial institutions in Hong Kong, to require them to report to me of any account, and I mean any account, held by persons named in those notices. Now, that is a very wide power. But that means you have to start from, number one, you identify the personalities, the companies involved. You ask the bank to give you all the information, whether or not those named personalities, companies have maintained any accounts there. And once you got the details of the accounts, you ask for details of the statement of accounts. Now, that could be something 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Now, in the old days, it's much easier because the record is there. Nowadays, because of the internet, they put it in the system. Now, the system might or might not be in Hong Kong. It might be elsewhere in faraway parts of the world. Now, they will say we need time. Okay. They may come back to you 1 month, 2 months, sometimes 3 months, depends on which bank. They come back with all the statements of accounts. Now, you got the statements of accounts, you start analyzing it. Analyzing it, you try to identify likely transactions that link to your investigations. And you go back to the bank and say, can you supply details about these particular transactions? Who own those accounts? Now, that will take another few months for them to come back with all the details. Now, with that details, you check their accounts as well. You may find other suspicious transactions. And then you have this third stage, fourth stage, fifth stage, until you get a full picture of everything. Now, then we will call the forensic accountants to come in to make a full analysis. But then, before you, there could be thousands and thousands of data. Okay, to put them all together in a web, you require the forensic people to do it. Now, that takes a long time. Now, investigating it is one thing. After the investigation, you have to identify what is of evidential value before you can be in a position to identify your targets and take actions against them. Okay. After taking actions against these people, you might still have to do a lot more bank inquiries before you get able to put in the evidence in the prosecution file for legal advice. Now, luckily, if you are in a position to identify suspicious transactions that might give you the evidence for preferring charges, you have to go for it. You don't, sometimes if the case is so complex, so big, you have to be focused on certain areas only. You can't do a complete investigation of everything. Okay, so prioritizing the investigation is important at a certain stage. So that takes a very, very long time. And if you talk about prosecution, I can tell you, a complex case like this, corruption and fraud, from start of the investigation till the end of the prosecution, and I mean including appeals, it could take 10 to 12 years. Now, that's lucky. That is lucky if you got all your people within your jurisdiction. Now, if you got somebody who's jumped bail or disappeared before you can finalize your investigation, you may be asking for extradition, all those proceedings. Now, that could take a much longer time. We had a case that involved corrupt bank officials, a very sophisticated fraudulent scheme. That took us 22 years to complete the investigation. That involves also extradition of bank officers from overseas, from UK, from France, from other parts of the world. Now, extradition is another thing. It may take at least a few years, sometimes 7 years. Now,
But like things like the BCCI, for example.
Yeah.
Did it really finish, or it's open until today?
That case, I think it lasts for about 10, 12 years.
10, 12 years.
Yeah. But other more complex cases with fugitives took a long time, long time. Because you are dealing with people who are rich. They could afford the legal representation.
Lawyers.
They fight every possibility.
Lawyers.
Yeah.
My last question was about payback.
Payback. Now, the best attack on corruption is to remove the corrupt proceeds from those corrupt people. Once we got the evidence for prosecution, the road for recovery of the assets is simple because the court will deal with it. There are laws laid down for it. Now, if you don't have a prosecution or your targets, your main targets, the beneficiaries, have escaped jurisdiction, then you may have to consider taking civil action. Now, civil action is possible locally and overseas. We had a number of cases, in particular those government servants who got more money than they should have. We laid proceedings not only within our jurisdiction but overseas as well. Once we've identified their proceeds, their properties overseas, deriving from corrupt proceeds. That may again take a long time.
Is there any leniency if there are person pays back before the sentence, before the investigation?
Yes. Some defendants in court, when they don't see a light of getting away, they might, through their representing lawyers, to negotiate by giving back, say, 70%, 80%.
Close the case.
And not close the case to get a lighter sentence. Yeah, that is possible. And for civil actions, I must say that it could take a long time. Sometimes, after years of spending your legal fees on nothing, it boils down to sitting down in the office and negotiate by both parties.
If you pay back before.
Sorry?
You don't get scot-free.
No. They shouldn't be, and it shouldn't be.
But they can.
I'm asking because this is the way it is here.
But the courts have the right to release them.
The court has the right, if there is a prosecution, the agency or the administration, the government, has the right as well.
Yes.
Maybe if you feel that the case is not very strong enough within your commission, you make that
So they can release
compromisation, so that not.
But that's got to be do it in an articulate way. You got to have smart people to negotiate.
Yes.
Now, unlike in the States nowadays, if you get caught by the authorities for fraud and corruption or violation of the foreign corrupt practices, before any proceedings, you might be in a position to negotiate, and that's quite common actually.
خلينا نعطي بس مختصر وبعدين في عندنا سؤالين.
هلا باختصار انه كان في تعليق من دكتور نبيل انه في انظمه سياسيه فاسده بالكامل لانها متاثره بمصالح مجموعات مصالح معينه او حتى بعض المصالح الاجراميه، واعطى امثله على ذلك. وكان السؤال ما مدى صعوبه عمل قضيه محكمه بحيث انها تروح للقضاء ويتم محاكمه الفاسدين. وكانت الإجابة إنه الصعوبة كبيرة لأنه القانون لازم يبرهن إنه اللي دفع الرشوة واللي قبل الرشوة ويثبت الدليل حادثة الرشوة نفسها بكل ظروفها وكل ملابساتها، وبالتالي لازم يكون أحد الطرفين يقدر يشهد على الطرف الآخر، أو إذا كان في وسيط في عملية الرشوة اللي صارت إنه هذا الوسيط هو اللي يقدر يشهد على هذا الطرف. هلا أسهل إثبات الفساد إذا كانت هناك قانون من أين لك هذا، وكان بعض الناس ركموا ثروات ولازم تبين من وين يثبتوا ملكية هاي الثروات وكيف تحصلوا عليها. السؤال الثاني كان بتعلق قديش الفترة اللازمة ما بين إجراء بداية التحقيق وملاحقة الفاسدين. كانت الإجابة إنه في السبعينيات والثمانينيات والتسعينيات تقريبا كانت تأخذ من 3 شهور لسنة، 3 شهور إذا كانت قضية واحدة لسنة إذا كان في قضايا أخرى. في حالة التلبس يذهب للمحاكمة فورا، ولكن الإجراءات معقدة، وأحيانا أصبح المجرمين أكثر ذكاء، يعني صار يصعب إثبات الصفقات اللي صار فيها هذا الفساد. سؤال كان إذا كان في تعاون مع دوائر الضرائب حتى الحصول على سجلات الضرائب ومعرفة الوضع المالي لكل هؤلاء الناس. في 1996 كان في مفاوضات عندهم بالمفوض، وسمح للمفوضية بالاطلاع على هاي السجلات بحدود معينة، وحتى هذا للشرطة مش مسموح. بالنسبة في عندهم صلاحية للتحقق من الحسابات البنكية أيضا، ممكن يطلعوا على كشوف الحسابات وممكن يحددوا كيف العلاقة بين كل حساب والتاني بكل نظام المصرفي المحلي والعالمي الموجود عندهم، بيتابعوا كل الحوالات، ولازم يلاقوا دليل قوي قبل ما يحددوا الهدف اللي بدهم يستهدفوه بالملاحقة. في بعض القضايا الصعبة جدا تأخذ من 10 ل 12 سنة لحتى يتم ملاحقة المجرمين، لأنه بالذات القضايا المالية صعبة جدا بسبب إنها بتكون محلية وبتطلع خارج البلاد. أيضا الصعوبة الثانية في تسليم المجرمين بعد ما بيكونوا فروا أثناء إجراء هاي التحقيقات، وهي إجراءات معقدة وتستغرق وقت طويل. وأحيانا عند المحاكمة البعض يفاوض لعقوبة أخف وترجيع متحصلات الفساد، مش كلها، يعني جزء كبير منها بس.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your presentation. Let me shift into Arabic so that we can understand each other and she can whisper. يعني أنا كنت عندي سؤال.
I have a question.
هو تحديدا حول معطيات رقمية بخصوص المتحصلات الجرمية في هونج كونج كمعدل خلال 10 سنوات الماضية، ومستوى الحكم في المحاكم قديش هو مرتفع مستوى الحكم، يعني عدد السنوات اللي بنحكم فيها الشخص، يعني
governance حكم السنتنس، يعني what is the level of sentence
level of sentence is how many years، مش عمر القضية في البحث. الأحكام الحكم مدة، لا كم سنة بنحكم. هي الموضوع الثاني اللي بدي أحكي فيه أو بدي أسأله إنه اللي هو معرفة الناس أو يعني مشاركة الناس في مكافحة الفساد واستعدادهم للإبلاغ عن الفساد، كان له أسباب مرتبطة بفعالية الهيئة وفعالية القضاء وتدخل الإعلام. وتدخل الإعلام.
So how did you manage to raise the awareness of the people and encourage them to report cases of corruption? Was it because the work of the commission was effective, the court system is also effective, and the media was playing a role as well?
ومشاركة الإعلام اللي كنت بدي أحكي إنه قديش هناك كمان كان في تغيير بالقوانين والنظم أو تعديل بالقوانين والنظم من أجل اللي هي تحقيق هاي النتائج بالسرعة اللي تحدث فيها.
So, to what extent did you intervene to change the laws and regulations?
Well, to answer your first part of the question regarding sentence and recovery of proceeds. Now, the sentence, I must say that each offence charge have its own maximum sentence as stated in the law. So the judge will have to adjudicate the criminality of the case before sentencing. If it is a serious matter, those people will get maximum sentence. If it is not that serious or the mitigation is strong, then it might be 50% or 30%. It all depends on the merit of the case. Now, again, for the confiscation of proceeds under the criminal code, they're all stated in the law. And the judge will have to act in accordance with the law. Usually for corruption offences in Hong Kong, it's 7 years for bribery, maximum, 10 years for disproportionate asset, 14 years for conspiracy to defraud, which is quite a common offence charge, and misconduct in public office, it could be another 7 years. Now,
Palestine, it's not more even 3 years.
لا يحكم فيهم بس
Never happened in a sentence more than 3 years.
لا يحكم فيهم.
Now, in the old days when corruption was rampant, sentence was quite high, quite severe. Nowadays, when with corruption under control, unless the case itself is very serious, the court might just take a lenient view on this. So it boils down to the merit of the case. The second question?
It's about the combination of media and the law.
Oh, yes. Now,
public participation.
we now, I remember that. Now, in the old days, now firstly we carry out surveys every year.
Perceptions.
And people's response. We have quarterly surveys, we have annual survey as well. Now, okay, we've done this for 30, 40 years. Now, in the old days, people were reluctant to come forward to complain. Only about 30 to 35% of the people were prepared to identify themselves when making a corruption complaint. Now, I'm talking about the 70s. Into the 80s is better. Nowadays, over 76% of the people are prepared to report corruption. And out of this 76, over 70% were prepared to identify themselves. Now, that is a good thing in terms of investigation and prosecution. If they're prepared to identify themselves, that makes a good chance for them to agree to testify in court. In other words, to be a witness against the corrupt. In the old days, people were worried about retaliation. Nowadays, it's much better because on top of that, we have a system of witness protection. If the witness is worried about his or her personal safety or well-being, our witness protection team would help. Now, the witness protection is not simply protecting the safety of the individuals, but also we look after their well-being, like
their
loss of
families
income
and
the family members. That is a good thing as a PR, and it's a good thing for the people who might consider themselves vulnerable. But for the law enforcement, it is a very painful process in terms of resources, in terms of deployment, because if you are required to protect a witness 24 hours plus his family, that takes a lot of your manpower, not to mention, expenses. But still, that's part of the job, and we'll have to do it. Luckily, in normal circumstances, there is nothing more than 2 ongoing witness protection programs. If there is more than that, our resources will be stretched.
Thank you.
And
We
the
still
media, I'm
have,
talking
some
about the
questions,
media,
yeah.
Sorry, the media, yes. The media is hate and light. Okay. You have to work to get them on side. Without their support, you may find yourself in dire straight situations, problematic.
Yes.
With their support, everything seems to be smooth, in particular the publicity. Now, the worst case scenario is when the media is in breach of the law. Particularly when there is corruption, they're selling information, in particular when they're breaching the secrecy code.